All right, good evening, everybody. We will get tonight's meeting started. Board President Chris Weigert is excused for personal reasons this evening, so he's asked me to stand in and chair this evening's meeting. So this is a public meeting of the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1. More than 24 hours prior to the meeting, notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors at the Education Service Center and at the West Bend Community Memorial Library. A copy was also sent to the Daily News, WIBD, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and other media sources that have requested notice of our meetings. I would ask the superintendent to confirm that tonight's meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. And in reviewing tonight's agenda, is there any discussion on the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Joel. Can we have a second?
Nancy, second.
Thank you, Nancy. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the agenda as published, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, thank you. We have an agenda for this evening. So first order of business this evening is recognition of our fall state athletic qualifiers. So to kick that off, I would invite up Aaron Felder, West Athletic Director.
All right, well, thank you very much for having us here tonight, and just want to congratulate. We have 5 swimmers, 4 from West and 1 from East, that qualified for state this past fall. And I want to call up our legend swim coaches, Dave Blumier and assistant coach Jim Soxie, to talk a little bit about the season and the girls. So congratulations on behalf of the district. We're incredibly proud of you.
Girls, want to step up in front there? Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Jim for coming along. Jim and I were walking down here, and we said that we've been doing this a couple of years, and we figured out we've been doing this for 95 years, coaching high school and club swimming. So please respect your elders. First of all, I'd like to thank the school board, the superintendent, the athletic department for even having a season. Obviously, this is an interesting year, but it meant a great deal to all the athletes in all the sports, fall and winter, that we were able to continue on. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our state qualifiers for the 2020 swim and dive team. We qualified 2 relays. Our first relay was the 200 free relay, which placed 11th. Our senior, Kaylee Krause. Thank you, Kaylee. Our senior, Julia Rod. Our junior, Ashley Janikowski. And junior, Maren McDonald. That was our 200 free relay. Our next relay was the 400 freestyle relay, and 3 of the girls were on that relay again. Kaylee Krause, Julia Rod, Ashley Jankowski, and Nicole Walters. That relay, the 400 free relay, took 15th in the state. Our only individual qualifier was Nicole Walters in the 100-yard butterfly. These were our qualifiers. Great group of girls. We'll miss them. Thank you.
Congratulations, ladies, on a wonderful season, and as the coach said, we're thrilled that we're able to have a season this year, and coaches, thank you for your endless time and support of the ladies and the teams. Next up, I would invite East Athletic Director Kevin Bryant to highlight our qualifier from East.
I want to thank the school board and Superintendent Wimmer for having us here tonight. 95 years. Wow. I know where to go to ask questions now, so that's just amazing. The other state qualifier we had is Tommy Conklin. If Tommy could come up, and Coach Dave Kramer is our cross-country coach. Tommy had an incredible season that was capped off by running in the state cross-country tournament representing West Bend East. So turn it over to Coach Kramer.
Well, I'd first like to thank Kevin and Julie in our athletic department for this unprecedented year with all the changes and everything. Our schedule got messed up pretty much all year, and they got us through it, and we appreciate all the work that they've done. I'd also like to thank my co-coach, Matt Lesperance. He couldn't make it here today, but he's happy that he could coach with me again this year and everything he brings to the team. We'll get to Tommy here. I first got to coach Tommy in 7th grade, so I've known him for a little while, and running was his thing. His dad made me assured that it was, and he has proven it this year. Last year, his PR time was a 17:59, and then this year, our first meet of the year against West in the dual meets, he finished with 17:34, so he actually set the bar pretty high for himself this year. He finished 7th place at conference and earned himself a first team all-conference award. He also went to the first sectional that we had. We actually added another sectional race this year, so he had to qualify twice to get to state. He finished 3rd in the first one, and the second one he qualified 8th. He was running about 12th place with about 100 yards left, and he passed 4 guys to qualify for state. He finished at state this year in 40th overall, and it's been 19 years since we sent a runner from East to state. The last person that did it for us was our co-coach, Matt Lesperance. But Tommy works very hard. We really appreciate all his efforts for the team. He's also our team captain and most valuable runner for our team. So thank you.
Congratulations, Tommy, on a great season. Coach, thank you for your countless hours investing in the young men as well. This brings us to our public participation portion of the agenda. I've not received any public comment cards. Is there anybody in the room that would like to address the board this evening? You're making it easy on the rookie tonight. One more time, anybody want to address the board? All right, seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda. On the consent agenda this evening, we have minutes of the January 11th, 2021 regular board meeting, approval of administrative contract renewals, ratification of contracts for which we have none this evening, resignations for which we have none this evening, and retirements. Any discussion about the consent agenda? If there is no discussion, I would move that we would accept the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Joel. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the consent agenda passes. Thank you. Next up, Superintendent Wimmer, your report, please.
Yeah, pleased to report that our high school students return to school 5 days per week, and we're holding steady with our numbers. When talking with kids, they did note they were a little tired, kind of returning to that schedule. And for some of you who experienced the parking lot, it felt like the first day of school when they came back, but happy to have students return. You know, when you think about kind of those small scale closures, we think about snow days or sometimes mechanical issues, things of that nature. And with snow in the forecast tomorrow, I just thought I would highlight how we make those decisions. So we get our weather information from the National Weather Service, and so I don't have to report on the kind of sensationalized news or anything like that. And we go into calls. Tomorrow morning we have a call as early as 3:45 a.m. And then we gather into small groups as superintendents by region related to weather. So certainly lake effect superintendents have a small group, we have a small group, et cetera. And we think about, is our bus company ready to run? Are the drivers in place? Are the roads safe? Sometimes we're hit with fog in this area. All of those things impact the decision. We try to make any decision by 5:30 a.m. so that we're appropriately notifying our staff and our families. Something that we talked about when we put in our planning days for staff was, do those days look different now that we have capacity to do distance learning? And they do. They wouldn't be a full day. They would be more of an amended day. We have a document of what an amended day would look like in front of staff for some feedback, and we'll communicate that to families. Again, everyone, knock on wood, I hope to not have to use that at all this season. We have enough on our plates. But again, we have the capacity now to do things a little different. And always, I think one of the things that we try and keep in mind for our families is being respectful of the nuances that something like a snow day might create. They could be still having to work, shoveling driveways, navigating difference in childcare, all of those things. So we try and create flexibility in those plans as we develop them. In keeping with the theme of student recognitions, we were recently notified that award-winning art by Samaya Evans, a sophomore at West High School, and Imadi Simon, a third grade student at McLean, will be displayed on multiple Milwaukee County Transit bus shelters on Martin Luther King Drive in Milwaukee. They were winners of the 2020 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Art Contest, sponsored by BMO Harris Bank, Milwaukee Brewers, the Milwaukee Bucks, We Energies, and other organizations. It was just announced at the 2021 awards that their 2020 artwork was selected for those displays in those large public installments. So congratulations to those students. Also, we've had some national qualifiers. 2 West students, senior Abby Wicklich and junior Ray Spores, qualified for the 2021 National Catholic Forensics League, the national final debate competition in the public forum category. The national tournament is still officially scheduled to be in Minneapolis in May, but we'll see if that will have to switch to a virtual event. This will be the 4th NCFL national competition for Abby and the 3rd for Ray. West senior Aaron Tenney's recently reached his 1,000th career point in basketball. That was quite the exciting evening. And our Ice Bears boys hockey team won the North Shore Conference. First time in their history they've won the conference. The team is a cooperative team made up of players from West Bend, Grafton, Germantown, Port Washington, Hartford, and Slinger. In addition, Mike Driscoll, who's the coach and an English teacher at East, was voted Coach of the Year in their hockey section of over 11 teams. So congratulations to students and staff for representing West Bend. Well done. One of the things that we wanted to make sure and talk about publicly, and just a reminder to the board, that we're going to have a series of upcoming closed sessions, and that is for the purpose of planning for and evaluating your superintendent, me. So those might come at the end of an existing meeting, or we might schedule those separately, but we wanted to foreshadow this specifically for the public. It's part of expected practice, but I know it always calls to question, hey, why are there so many closed session meetings? But that's what we'll be engaged in, which, again, part of regular routine and practice. I know Emily Melstrand will be here this evening presenting, but I just wanted to give a shout out to her and the team. Last week, more than 100 people attended the 4K informational meeting that she hosted via Zoom. Enrollment for 4K for the 21-22 school year begins on February 8th. This is also the day families can enroll children in kindergarten for next school year as well. So if your child's already in 4K, don't worry, you don't have to re-enroll. But we want you to check out our wonderful 4K and early learning programs with our community partners, as well as our Washington County provider of Head Start. You'll learn a little bit more about that this evening. All first-time enrollments for the districts will be done online this year, so you can check out our website for more information, or as always, feel free to give us a call. So other than that, just a lot of celebrations of students and accomplishments, and happy to have some non-COVID topics to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you. And yes, again, congratulations to our students, our coaches. A lot of good stuff happening in the West Bend School District. Thank you. Moving to our action items section of the agenda this evening. First up, we have Dave Ross coming up to present the final proposed list of capital projects for 2021, 22. Dave.
Good evening, everyone. I got to tell you, this is so much better actually being here than quickly trying to text Andy what the answer is to any of your questions. So this is much better.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's great to be here. Based on the comments from the previous board meeting, I did make some changes into the layout of the chart in your packet, so that you can see the installation date of most of the equipment that was on that list. There has been one change from the original list, and that is we removed the gym floor replacement in the south gym of the yellow lemon pad flooring area, and added in a new sound system for the athletic field, and then some VCT replacement outside the south gym. Other than that, the list remains the same. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a comment that I'd like you to maybe comment on.
Okay.
Reviewing the facility needs of our district and not going into a long history, but just covering maybe the last year, there was a independent task force, if we remember, October 14th, that I just pulled out to prep for this meeting. October 14th of 2019, that included over a dozen people from local businesses, facility leaders of West Bend Mutual, local engineers and architects, and former mayor, and others involved with experience. And Dave, you were very open to show them all our facilities, which are, if I recall, 1 million square feet under roof, and I don't know how many acres. Maybe you could comment on that. But there's a lot of needs within our facilities, and I just want to point that out to the public listening. The independent task force, and this was all even public record and knowledge as of the October 14th, 2019 board meeting. Just in our elementary schools, they identified $21 million worth of projects, and in our high school, $20 million worth of projects. So that's $40 million worth of projects in our facilities. Dave and your team, we get the best of our facilities. I know we have even the community involved, like with this nice performing arts center we're in here today. But I'm just saying there's a lot of needs out there. So the $1.6 million of requests, most of them are related to even roof repair and general upkeep to parking lots and general maintenance, HVAC equipment that is very old. So we're just covering a fraction of that. It seems like we're, as we went into detail last board meeting, $500,000 more dollars we're able to invest this year to try to narrow that gap of roughly $40 million worth of projects. So I just want to commend your team and put it in context. And if any of my comments are incorrect, I would just like you to.
No, you're pretty much spot on, Kurt. You know, the projects on this list are not the kind of projects that most people get really excited about. They are the nuts and bolts. They are keeping the buildings open and operating, but we really aren't doing a whole lot of enhancement of the educational experience that students are having in our buildings. So, like I said, we're doing the best we can with what we have, and I think somebody made a comment the last meeting that until we really get going on the facilities thing and get past the whole COVID piece, it is getting hard to start picking these projects out because you really don't want to spend money on something that may or may not be there. So we're really trying to be strategic about you know, where we're going with some of the projects, and really trying to really hone in on what we're doing, but make sure that it's going to be something that's going to be lasting for the district and the community.
Thank you, Kurt. Any other questions of Dave?
I'm I know a lot of places are, quote, taking advantage of the COVID situation to make certain, do certain projects. Is that something that, and I doubt that that's going to be able to happen here because of distancing and, but could you speak to that so that our community knows where our thoughts are on that as a district?
Well, in terms of some of the work that we did related to COVID, you know, one of the big things that we really ended up doing was we replaced probably $100,000 worth of water fountains, the old porcelain kind. They're now electric coolers with bottle fillers. And yes, there's still some more to go, but we have improved that for all students, because that was across every building in the district. We've also looked at kind of our cleaning procedures and how we're dealing with things. You know, we used to try to always to make things look their best. Well, now we're actually cleaning for cleanliness rather than appearance. And sometimes things may not look as bright and shiny as they have in the past, but I can assure you our custodians and even our staff in the buildings in between classes are doing a great job keeping up with everything. And I think just the numbers that we've seen in our schools in terms of COVID cases are testament to that.
I've noticed a difference, and I feel like the schools are very clean, so thank you. It does go noticed.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dave? If
I
not,
recommend that the Board of Education approve the capital projects list and budget in the amount of $1,673,917.
thank you, Kurt. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Aaron. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Next up, Andy Sarnow is going to present the Quarter 2 revenues and expenditures in the aggregate for 2020-21. Andy.
Good evening, members of the board. Superintendent Wimmer, thank you for your time this evening. Couple topics this evening. First one in a row, Quarter 2, and again, taking a look at this from two different perspectives. We're about halfway through the fiscal year, not quite halfway through the school year, but where are we in regards to this year's budget to actual, and then framing that out additionally in comparison to last year's budget to actual by percentage. I'm trying to find that comparison to give a little bit of supplemental information just to make sure that we're spending money wisely where it's having a nice impact on student learning and other district priorities. I do have this broken out by fund and then by main categories, revenues, expenditures, and then a few subcategories as well. Items blocked in by fund, and then a couple of notes. Generally, I highlight an area off to the side, off to the right, if there is something that's notable. General fund, and let me make that just a smidge bit bigger. Oops, have to do it down below, I think. There we go. So with our general fund, which is our main activity fund, activity, and this is overall through all different funds of all activities that I'm seeing at this point in time, I have no points of concern. I've been meeting now with building principals, budget holders, departmental leads. One thing that I'm finding, and I'm encouraged by this, we're having a frugal year. I think we're addressing, as Mr. Ross indicated, the safety, the wellness of both our staff as well as our children. But we're having a frugal year. There's not a lot of professional development that's going on. Some of that is a little bit more cost effective with virtual activity. And so as I'm looking at this, things are trending down just a little bit, primarily in some of those purchase service areas. But overall, frugal year, we're making sure that we're still doing things that are important, but we're not quite spending as much money as we have in past years. So things are trending very closely. About the only variances that I'm seeing is where the Department of Public Instruction tells us from one year to the next that we have to code things just a little bit differently. And so some of those things are reflected in this budget. equipment versus consumables. You'll see some of those areas. I'll highlight them here so you can see that. But some of these consumables versus equipment, just a little bit different because we're required to code them differently. But revenues are tracking as we would anticipate, expenditures are tracking. This is our large main fund, and I'm sharing a little bit more with you. I think you know a lot of this, so it's really just a little bit of additional detail for those that might be in the audience or at home. Our next activity, Fund 21, which is our gift fund. This is primarily student dollars. Everything's tracking as would be anticipated. We did convert money over with the high school, so we're tracking that just a little bit differently. Governmental Accounting Standards Board required that, so I will reflect any of those large changes, 1,385% increase this year because of that, but I'll reflect those in the amended budget this spring. Fund 27, which is our special education. Revenues are trending well. We have timely grant claims this year, and expenditures are very minimal. Those variances that we might expect some differences high and low. In fact, very few notable things in there. Fund 29, Ms. Melstrand will be up here shortly, but they not only have their normal allocation, but there's a supplemental, a COVID additional grant that they've received, but everything, again, is tracking very well with where we would anticipate revenues and expenditures with some grants having come in. You can see revenues to expenditures are very close. Some of our debt service, our non-referendum debt, as well as our referendum debt, both of those are just basically tracking with the payment terms, so principal and interest, and no concerns in this area. A little bit of our facilities designated monies. We have money in Fund 41, as Mr. Ross just pointed out, tracking quite well. In fact, we should, unless we have some additional activity here at year end, add a little bit more to fund balance in our Fund 41. Fund 46, no planned activity at this point in time short of that interest income, which is, you'll note, significantly lower. Our return on investments on those dollars right now, even with our sweep account. We also have some money designated through a couple different areas of interest. Our local government investment account earning, 7 basis points, when this time last year it was 30, 40 basis points. So you'll notice that it's considerably lower than it had been last year. Fund 49, that's where we had that Barton Trust money, but no activity planned for this year. That is spendable at any point, though. Fund 50, Abby Padilla in Food Services is doing a great job. A lot of federal activity because all of this year, from September 1st all the way through June 10th, is all federally supported. So all of that activity, and she's doing a wonderful job getting creative. They've had some absences, and she's dealing with it quite well. But we're making sure our kids are fed and a nutritious breakfast as well as lunch. Fund 73, this is our OPEB. We are receiving some of the money from our retirees, but that large transfer of money isn't made until approximately July 30th, a few days before that, just to make sure that an appropriate dollar amount goes into this as a revenue source, as well as the expenditures, which isn't done until the audit is underway this next summer. Fund 80, Community Services, a little bit less activity this year. The fall middle school sports that are in this area did not take place, but we're well underway now with some of those other activities. The school resource officers that are in here, some of those before and after school activities that we have with some of our partners are taking place. So this is all reflected accordingly. And then as well, we are the cooperative fiscal agent for building projects. Ooh, that, I apologize, there's just a little typo there. That's just the expenditures for the hockey cooperative. But we do have revenues that should be taking place here shortly. The season is well underway, and we're going to start seeing some additional expenditures as they're having their competitions. Happy to answer any questions if anybody would like any discussion.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions on revenues and expenses? Very thorough as always. Much appreciated.
I move to accept the 2020-2021 fiscal year quarter two revenues and expenditures in the aggregate as presented.
Thank you, Joel. Is there a second?
Second, Tawny.
Thank you, Tani. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved. Thank you. And Andy's going to stay up here and take us through the fund balance designation for 2020-21 as of July 1st, 2020 as well.
Thank you again. The opportunity we have here is our audit was accepted at the last meeting. In conjunction with that, there's a recommendation to address any changes in fund balance designations. So we have the beginning from last year, beginning fund balance, ending fund balance, which would be the start, so the 7/1 of 2020 designated fund balance under these different categories, and then the variance or the period variance with any notes. This is unchanged from the presentation that I made where we had a brief discussion at the last meeting, but I'd be happy to address any questions or concerns you have at this point. It is inclusive top section general fund, and then we start going down into some of the other funds, debt service, food service, community service, student activities and whatnot. So.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions, comments on this piece? Hearing none, I would move to accept the fund balance designations effective July 1, 2020 for the 2020-2021 fiscal year as presented.
I second.
Thank you, Kurt. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's approved. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Next up, Emily Malstrand will be taking us through the Head Start bus monitor waiver.
All right, good evening. I'm Emily Malstrand. I'm the principal of early learning for the West Bend School District, and I have the privilege tonight of sharing with you two different topics. The first one is actually an action item and relates to an annual request for a for a waiver of the Head Start performance standard that stipulates the requirement for bus monitors on all of our buses. So the Office of Head Start has a variety, actually hundreds of performance standards that we adhere to annually in order to run our program. And one of those performance standards requires that we place bus monitors on each of our Head Start buses. And we ask for this waiver annually so that we have the flexibility to make more individualized decisions for students, and so that we're in alignment with our West Bend School District procedures. So in addition to that, I've been working really hard to align some of my Head Start bus routes with 4K routes. Number one, because it's very fiscally responsible, but it allows us to be more efficient in our transportation. And putting bus monitors on all of the bus becomes really impactful on our overall budget. So what I'm asking for tonight is your approval to waive that requirement with the Office of Head Start and allow us the flexibility to decide based upon student need when we might put a bus monitor on the bus. And we do that from time to time when student need requires it. And we also make decisions like, for example, if I have a little one who just can't manage a long bus route, we have the opportunity to put them on a van with a shorter duration and get them home more quickly. So any questions or comments that you have, I would gladly take, and then I'd respectfully request that you approve the motion.
Emily, this is for the 2021-2022 school year?
Correct.
So I will move to approve the Head Start bus waiver for the 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you, Joel. Is there a second?
I'll second, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron. Any discussion on the motion?
I have a question. Why are we allowed to waive this, but I assume we're not allowed to waive other things?
Yeah, so this is just one of the performance standards that the Office of Head Start gives us some flexibility around. There are other programs that are affiliated with school districts who will ask for that waiver for the same reasons that we do. But it's just one of the performance standards that they give us some flexibility around with the approval of our policy council and our governing board.
Because I know Head Start is pretty strict about all the performance measures that are recorded and collected on a daily basis, really. I mean, I think it's great that they're allowing us to waive that one. I guess I'm just surprised that they're allowing that flexibility. So I'm in favor of taking advantage of that. I was just curious.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely correct, Tani, and actually in my next presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the flexibilities that they've provided to us this particular year in response to COVID, because you're right, it's a federally funded program and the oversight is generally very, very tight, but I am seeing them be more responsive to individual needs within communities. And this is just one example of that. And actually, I think this has been approved, at least for the last decade. So this one has been something that they've been a little more flexible about long-term. But you are absolutely correct.
So Emily, this is a waiver that this district has applied for each of the last 10 years roughly.
Absolutely. For as long as I've been around the Head Start program, we've had a waiver for that.
Okay. And obviously not having a monitor on the bus, there is some level of risk in terms of oversight, but I'm assuming if we've done this for the last 10 years, we're judicious in that process and determining where it fits, where it doesn't fit.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we do as a district that's pretty exceptional in terms of how we organize our busing is our preschool age children are on the bus with preschool age children. So it's just 3 and 4-year-olds on the bus. Our teachers do a lot of education with kids at the beginning of the year around bus safety, and we have put bus monitors on. Generally at the beginning of the year, I'll have some of our instructional aides ride along, maybe for a couple of days, sometimes for a couple of weeks, depending on the needs of the children. But the nice thing about the waiver is it gives us the flexibility to back away when it's no longer a need and allow us to be a little bit more fiscally responsive, as opposed to just leaving the monitors on there beyond the point where children need them. And I will say I've also made the decision mid-year, if I have a little one who's struggling on the bus again, we'll put an instructional aide or a paraprofessional back on the bus to support the child. So it's just nice to be able to be responsive to children's needs in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. Thank you. I'm not for spending money unnecessarily, and as we've heard with so many things this year, it's about choice and giving us that flexibility to be responsible with the taxpayer dollar. So,
Absolutely.
any other questions or comments? We do have a motion on the floor. Okay, so then all in favor of approving the waiver, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, waiver's approved. Thank you, Emily. We'll see you in a few minutes.
All right.
And last up on the action items this evening, Superintendent Wimmer will take us through the open enrollment seats.
You'll recall at our last meeting, we presented exactly how those calculation methods are used. The Department of Public Instruction is who oversees the open enrollment process for us, so we utilize all the requirements of their process to calculate our seats. In looking at how we project enrollment, class size, how those seats are determined, recall that we went over those numbers. You can see those in the documents before you. We have unlimited seats at K4 and K5, again, navigating enrollment in uncertain times, as well as 172 seats across the district that the board would formally approve, and then we can move forward with the process for allocation. Should something change, we can always revisit and look at enrollment, but again, wanting to come in with our best estimates on enrollment to ensure that we have appropriate space for our residents as they move in at all times throughout the year. So this ensures that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Wimmer on the open enrollment seats?
Maybe just a question for clarification. So for school district residents are given the priority for these seats, but maybe implying a question. We are not discouraging people from other surrounding communities to apply, and seeing that we only have 170. We're doing some great things in the West Bend School District, so we're open to other communities applying into the West Bend School District.
Sure, so not only, as you said, do we make room, but we're always obligated to serve residents in our community. So I would always say, first and foremost, move here. We have amazing things happening. Come on in. But there's always room. So even if we had to hire or create a new section or do something, residents are always welcome in their resident school districts. As you said, families shouldn't be discouraged because you'll see very conservative seats in most websites. We just have to put those up. Families can feel free to give my office a call, talk with us around enrollment. When they do the application, it's an online application and you can pick up to 3 districts. So as you said, don't be discouraged. Look and see if this has got a program that you want. Certainly too, some nuances of kind of the rules around open enrollment. We fully intend to continue with our virtual program into next year. It's not a standalone school, so I can't put the seats out that way, but you might apply and be looking for that program placement too. So there's some work around there. So as you mentioned, there's amazing things happening here, and we wouldn't want to discourage enrollment. It just helps us prioritize and ensure that we have seats available, that we keep our class sizes where we would expect them to be as well. But again, residents are always guaranteed a seat in your resident district.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kurt. Any other questions for the superintendent?
And just to be clear, as we welcome people into our district, which we do with open arms, if when people do open enroll in, that does not push out. And this is what you were just saying, but I just want to make absolutely clear that people understand that we're not doing it at the expense of a local resident.
Correct, that's exactly the intention. It gives us enough wiggle room, so to speak, to attend to the nuances of our own enrollment. So they have that. It also doesn't impact part-time enrollment or coming to us. We have some amazing programs. Our construction program at the high school that is unique, and kids might come from other districts, just as they do for our sports programs in cooperative teams. They might come for those. This is not that process. That's part-time enrollment, that's coming in for classes, that's agreement with district. This is a full-time open enrollment piece, so it's also very different.
And kids that do homeschool or other private online schools, they can also enroll for extracurriculars or
Absolutely.
athletics, that sort of thing.
Yes, clubs and athletic opportunities for residents, whether, like you said, if you're homeschooled, you're always welcome. Those have been hampered by COVID this year, but certainly looking to have those back full force in the future. But they're always welcome. And many of our families, my experience in the past having a comprehensive K-12 virtual program is that it really caters uniquely to those in a homeschool environment who just need maybe that support, especially when the kids get older with more comprehensive, perhaps math, science courses. They appreciate having kind of that ability to take point on education within the home, but appreciate the resources. And then, as you said, some of those extracurriculars we can provide here in the schools.
Thank you, Tani. Anybody else questions? If not, then I would move to approve the open enrollment seats for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
Second, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Motion is approved. And this brings us to the report section of the agenda. We have one item this evening. We'll call Emily Melstrand back up to take us through the Head Start self-assessment.
All right, thank you very much. And I'll start out by saying that I find this report much more exciting than the bus waiver report. So I'm here tonight to talk with you about the Washington County Head Start Community and Self-Assessment. And I want to start out just by framing this for the community. I know most of you are aware of our Washington County Head Start program and how it operates, but I did want to point out that the West Bend School District is the grantee of the Washington County Head Start Award, and that is somewhat unusual. There are only 3 districts in the state of Wisconsin who are also the grantee of their county Head Start program, and we're one of them. I also wanted to point out that Washington County Head Start has 2 governing boards or groups of people helping to kind of make decisions about our strategic focus and our allocation of funds. And that is you, the West Bend School District School Board, and also the Washington County Parent Group or Policy Council. And as I mentioned earlier, the Washington County Head Start follows regulations that are put forth by the Office of Head Start, and those are called our Head Start Performance Standards. And they're very extensive, and the oversight is very specific. So we have 3 locations for Head Start. We serve children in our program at the Rolfs Education Center, at the Kettle Moraine YMCA, the main campus on West Washington, and also at the Jackson Community Center. And our target is to serve 144 eligible students who are between the ages of 3 years old and 5 prior to kindergarten. So annually, we conduct a community and self-assessment, and it's really kind of a comprehensive review of our program's progress, and also looking very specifically at different sets of data. So it's a little confusing because we look at our progress towards our current year goals for our program, and we're only mid-year through our current year when we have to conduct this self-assessment in preparation for our refunding application. So we're looking at progress towards those goals up till this point in the school year. We're also looking at our program information report, which is our comprehensive report of our progress made towards those Head Start performance standards during the previous school year, so 19-20. I include in this self-assessment survey information collected through surveys of our parents, of our policy council members, of you, the school board, and then also our staff. And that really helps me, with my team, determine our strategic focus for the upcoming school year. The goal of this self-assessment and community assessment is really to identify our program strengths and then align our areas of focus to the data that we reviewed and also to the needs in our community. And of course, the outcome is to formulate kind of a strategic focus. So that's what I'm going to share with you tonight. We've talked a lot about COVID, and I wish that it wasn't necessary to talk about it in reference to this program, but we certainly had to do some reprioritization in response to COVID-19. And I'm first going to start out by telling you that I am just tremendously proud of the teachers that I serve, because they have stepped up and provided really high quality education to our preschool age kids for an entire half a school year in the midst of a pandemic. So they have done a fantastic job. But with that, our leadership team and the Office of Head Start have really allowed us some flexibility to prioritize what's really important this year. And I'm thankful for that from our school board, from our upper leadership, and then also the Office of Head Start. So our primary focus this year really has been student and staff health and safety. Our goal has been to have kids at school in a safe learning environment and to provide them with high quality instruction. And I do want to point out that because I'm talking about safety here, you will note that the children in the boat, the classroom boat, are equipped with flotation devices. I wanted to point that out, that was very strategic in alignment with health and safety of students. We always put life jackets on our kids. But in all sincerity, the Office of Head Start has been really phenomenal about saying to us, we know that this is a challenging situation, and we're going to be flexible with you in terms of giving you some leeway around enrollment, around the data collection, and around progress monitoring. And one of the things that has been most impactful for us has been the flexibility around enrollment. I'm going to mention this later, but our enrollment is a little bit lower this year in the Head Start program, and some of that is because we have had more preschool parents this year opt to keep their children home. But I will also tell you strategically, it has allowed me to really capitalize on our staff and move people around when we've had absences, providing less disruption to the education of our preschool age kids. So the other two areas that we have prioritized as most important during this school year has been the implementation of the pyramid model, which is a framework that supports the social emotional needs of children, and really deep focus on co-teaching and collaboration. I think everybody in this room tonight knows the importance of continuity in terms of schedule on children, all children. But I'm going to tell you, for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, that ability to provide consistency in order to keep them balanced socially and emotionally has really, really been important during this pandemic year. So the two areas of focus that I just wanted to highlight, the pyramid model is the framework that we use to support social emotional development. When we have had the opportunity to engage in professional learning communities, this has been our primary focus as a staff. And again, it's really been directed on making sure our kids are okay and they have the skills to manage what's happening in their classrooms, in their worlds, et cetera. So one of the things I was super excited about is we did an analysis of our behavior intervention data. We use a tool called the BIR, which is a behavior incident rating scale that allows teachers to capture challenging behavior in preschool age children. And when we looked at that data last year at this time in comparison to this year at this time, we actually had a 50% reduction in the number of BIRs, which means, I think we went from 138 to 69. And that tells me that our teachers are doing a really exceptional job of meeting the needs of kids and helping them be balanced and regulated. In addition to that, 80 to 90% varied by social emotional objective, but 80 to 90% of our students are on track for meeting their age level band in those social emotional objectives. We have been focusing tremendously on co-teaching and collaboration with our special service providers. I'm exceptionally proud of the fact that all of our students are educated in the least restrictive environment in our preschool program. We are using co-teaching to the maximum extent possible. I have 9 Head Start classrooms, and 5 of them are currently using a co-taught model where there's a special education teacher pairing with a regular education teacher, our English language learning teacher pairing with a regular ed teacher, or potentially 2 Head Start teachers working together. And because of that, we've had really good success in meeting the needs of our kids who have unique special needs or who are learning English as a second language. And in addition to that, when we have had absences, it's really nice for the kids if their regular ed teacher's out and there's a co-teacher in the classroom, the continuity of service has really been strong. So our program information report is the report that's ran annually to look at our progress towards the performance indicators put forth by the Office of Head Start. And there's different categories that we look at, and the categories are actually far more extensive than what I'm sharing with you tonight, but I wanted to highlight a couple of things. The first one is our enrollment. In 1920, we met our expected enrollment of 144 students. I am going to foreshadow that there's going to be a decrease in that for the 2021 school year in response to COVID. Our service delivery model, we are expanding our service delivery model to include not just half and full day options, but a 3/4 day option that we do at Jackson Community Center. And also this year we piloted the opportunity for children to be dually enrolled in Head Start at Jackson Community Center and then jump into the 4K program in the afternoon, which has been really successful, and that's going to be a focus for 21-22. Our education and program services really highlighted our focus on play-based instruction and also the positive results from our pyramid implementation. There's 2 things in the health category that are going to trigger a response within our strategic plan, and one of them was noted last year. We have a higher number of students in our program who are falling into the overweight and obese category in terms of their health. And the Office of Head Start requires us to track and monitor several different indicators within a child's health profile, and this is one of them. And we're consistently having kids who fall into that category, and that's something we want to address as a program. The other thing that was highlighted in this year's PIR is the fact that we have less kids right now with documented continuous health care. And that really means that we're looking for children to engage in at least one wellness appointment annually, and we're required to collect documentation to support that. And of course, in the spring when COVID hit, we had lots of families who canceled appointments in the springs, which makes sense. But even in spite of that, we still had a little bit of a dip in our ability to document that. So that will be a continued focus, because we certainly want to make sure that kids are healthy and receiving that health care. Family engagement is an area that we're going to see a slight decrease in. Obviously, with the pandemic, it's hard to have families engaged in volunteerism and engaged in activities in the school, but that's certainly something that we focus on year after year regardless. And then the last thing I wanted to mention under the PIR is our services for children with disabilities. We actually have 20% of our Head Start population identified as children who have IEPs. And for me, this is just one of those pieces of information that really validates the importance of that co-teaching model and continuing to support that in our strategic plan. So I've already mentioned many of our current program strengths just in my conversation. But again, you know, we have lots of really cool programming options for kids, and we continue to expand that through our community partnerships. We are extremely proud of our inclusive instructional format, and very proud of the work that's happening because of our pyramid model implementation. And so what's next? Again, I've kind of foreshadowed this in my conversation, but based upon all of that information, we've identified a couple areas of focus for our strategic plan in 21-22. The first area of focus is going to be that continuous health care for students and really working to decrease the number of kiddos who are falling into that overweight category by increasing opportunities for movement and exercise and focusing on healthy eating with the support of Abby and some community resources. We're going to continue to focus on expanding community partnerships. I am so proud of the work that's happening at the YMCA, and I want to replicate that in other ways. I know I shared this last year, but our kiddos who are in Head Start at the YMCA, every single one of them have the opportunity to take a swimming class, and to participate in a sports class, and to participate in a science type class and cooking class. And for some of our kids, they will tell us that's the first time they've been in a swimming pool. And to me, that is so important for these little kiddos to have that experience. We're going to continue to focus on parent engagement through volunteerism by finding family events that really bring our families together and a part of their child's education. And then we are going to continue to implement and expand our pyramid model practices through coaching, by targeting trauma-informed care and really focusing on putting supports and services in place for children who need them so that they can be successful in our learning environments. And so what's next? I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. Superintendent Wimmer already mentioned this, but we had a great turnout for our virtual parent night. One of the things that's unique this year that we incorporated into the online enrollment is there's actually questions integrated into the module that will ask parents if they might be Head Start eligible, and it will actually trigger for them the opportunity to view the Head Start requirements. And we've already had a couple folks who didn't know they were eligible, who are piloting that program with us, reach out and say, hey, I think I might be eligible for Head Start. So that's also kind of a system of recruitment. We are going to keep working on our service delivery options, and I am going to bring all of this information back to you in March as we apply for the refunding application for Washington County Head Start for 21-22. And that is kind of the summary of our self-assessment. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Emily. Very thorough. Wonderful job that your staff's doing with our kiddos. Any questions, comments for Emily?
Well, I just have a comment. So just to thank you for your presentation. Great pictures in there to share. Even you can get a feeling for how the smiles on the kids' faces. Thank you, your leadership, your teachers, the community partners. I think this is just a blooming program that we have here, and I'm glad for the good attendance yesterday. And maybe a silver lining to this pandemic is there might be more 3 and 4 year olds 3 to 4 years from now. So,
We can hope.
so
Thank you, Kurt.
just thank you.
I'd like to give kudos to your engagement, to have over 100 participants in your virtual parent night, when you have 144 enrolled. That's outstanding. So congratulations.
Thank you. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about at the beginning of that parent night was the idea that, and I was walking in with Paul, and I had mentioned that, you know, there are some silver linings, and sometimes we have to dig deep to find them in the midst of this pandemic. But I will say, this Google Meet thing is awesome for parents of 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. I mean, you don't have to find daycare. It's super cute when a 3-year-old pops their head into the screen. Everybody loves that. So I do think we'll actually use some of these systems of communication moving forward as an option for parents.
Wonderful.
All right. Well,
Wonderful.
thank you very much for your time
you.
tonight.
Thank you. We'll see you back in March.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, that brings us to the future agenda items. So our upcoming board meeting calendar, February 2nd, is our curriculum committee meeting, and then February 8th and February 22nd will be regularly scheduled board meetings. Anything else that needs to come before the board at this time? Anything for follow-up or communication?
Paul, I'd like to make a quick announcement to my fellow members. The policy committee hasn't met since June 1st. And kind of the reason behind that is we wanted our superintendent to be able to tackle some other more pressing topics like our back-to-school plan and things like that. But in the meantime, she has had an opportunity to dive into our policy. And so I'm going to set up a meeting with her later this week to kind of go through our policy committee agenda for the next, handful of months. If you don't know it or not, Paul, you are on the policy committee as well as Chris
I do.
Weigert. And whenever we schedule a policy committee meeting, I will make sure the rest of the board knows when and where those are, because those are open for anybody to come and participate. But we will be convening the policy committee here pretty soon. So just want to let you all know that.
Good, thank you, Joel. Yeah, look forward to getting back into that cycle. So, and Superintendent, that means that you got your running shoes on. You've had them on for many months, and you're up to speed. So, look forward to those conversations. Anything else for the board this evening? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Nancy. Second? Second. Thank you, Joel. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.